Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about a single card that was spoiled today. The Pinnacle Emissary I think is probably the most broken card in Edge of Eternities. And let's talk through some examples in Modern and Standard where I think this card is going to show up and play a huge role and be really powerful in both of those formats and maybe even in other older formats for sure. But let's talk about what the card does. This is a 3 mana blue and red hybrid artifact creature, which is a robot, 3/3 stats, and it says whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying, and this token can block only creatures with flying, and you can warp it in for 1 mana, either a blue or a red mana. So basically, when you warp something in, you put it into play, and then at the end of turn, it gets exiled, and then you can play it again on a later turn for its regular cost. So I really think this card is very powerful because mostly because of this warp ability for 1 mana. And the things that you can do in Modern on turn 1, and some really explosive turns you can have in Standard that you can do. So I couldn't find any of these drone artifact tokens, so I'm using Thopter tokens. You can just say they have this ability that they can only block creatures with flying. But being a 1/1 flyer and an artifact token that this creates is very, very powerful. So let's talk about some examples of how you could use this in Modern. And yes, this is probably some magical Christmas land, but also the average case scenario for this card I think is quite good as well. So let's say in Modern you have an island to start and you warp this in on turn 1, right? So you have this in play, you have this ability every time you cast an artifact spell, you're going to make a drone token here. So in Modern, there's lots of 0 mana artifacts, and in older formats, there's a lot of 0 mana artifacts. But some of them get played, and especially in Affinity shells, they're quite good already. So say you have like Memnite, right? Memnite would get cast, and then while it's on the stack, this ability will trigger and create a Thopter, or not a Thopter, a drone, I should say. Uh, Similar thing. Let's just say for you have another Memnite in your hand or any other 0 artifact. But for this example, we're going to use Memnites to try to just see how much power we can get on turn 1 with this guy. So you have a Memnite, another Memnite, and you make another drone token here. So now, because this itself is an artifact, you have 5 artifacts. So this is contributing to your affinity count of 5 right now. So things like Frogmite, you can now play for free again, which will then give you another drone token here. So now we're up to 7 artifacts here, 5 here, and then because it itself is an artifact, it is going to contribute to your affinity count as well. So things like Mere Enforcer or the Sojourner's Companion are free. You can cast that and get another Thopter, and then say you have another one of those in your hand, right? Uh, Frogmere Enforcer, and then get another Thopter. So that's all 7 cards. If you're on the draw, maybe you could have another card and go even more bananas with this, but this is a very good opening hand. Obviously, this is kind of magical Christmas land, but just to kind of see the ceiling of this card. Turn 1, you play this out, and you've generated 17 power on the board. Uh, Pretty hard to answer. 5 of these are flying creatures as well, so hard to block. And the other thing is this thing gets warped out at the end of turn. I guess it's technically 20 power if you want to count the power here, but it gets warped out at a turn, and then on a later turn you can play this card again and sort of go off again potentially if they manage to answer what you do on turn 1. Now you could say this is magical Christmas land. It is a very good hand, but let's just say that you didn't have these Mere Enforcer cards up here, and you just played 2 or 3 casting cost artifacts on turn 1 along with this. So that's basically paying 1 mana to make 2 or 3 drone tokens on turn 1, which is pretty good just on its own. Plus, you don't really lose a card by doing so because this warps out, and then you can cast it again on a later turn and continue to use its ability. So you haven't really used a card to get those uh, drone tokens at all, essentially, because you're going to get this guy back later in the game potentially. So um, the amount of drone tokens this thing can generate on turn 1 is pretty absurd, and there's quite a bit of redundancy in Modern. Again, lots of 0 mana casting cost artifacts that you could play, lots of different things with affinity that you could play. Um, so you can kind of mix and match different cards here. And again, even if there was just like more lands or you had to mulligan, being able to play out, say, 3 Thopters or 2 Thopters on turn 1 is pretty powerful on its own. So let's just go to another example. And this one, say you have an island, and again, you warp in the Emissary on turn 1 in Modern. Another 0 mana card, like an Ornithopter, you could play. It gives you a drone token. And then for this example, let's just say you have a Mox Opal, which now Metalcraft is turned on because of all these artifacts you have in play. So very easy to turn on Mox Opal with this card on turn 1. So you can kind of use this mana. So let's just say you had another 0, any other zeros, Mishra's Bauble gives you some more drone tokens, and then now your affinity count again is up to 7. You could play Mirror Enforcer for free, get some more. But then if you use this blue mana here, the Mox Opal, you could play something like Thought Monitor, even Thoughtcast to draw more cards and then draw potentially more zeros and play those. Just kind of continue to go off. But you can kind of keep going even on turn 1 and just keep generating these drone tokens over and over and over again if you can get card draw going. And this is all again turn 1. And then the thing about Mox Opal too, which you would certainly be playing in this sort of affinity deck, is that it would let you potentially, on the second turn, play this out after it gets warped out. You could play it again, and then get its abilities again, continuing to go throughout the whole game. As long as your opponent doesn't remove it. But the card advantage and the board advantage and the speed that this card provides is pretty insane to me. So those are some examples in Modern. You could add Kappa Cannoneer to this kind of affinity deck. I know affinity decks these days don't really run these sort of not too many affinity cards, but maybe this would bring back a different type of affinity deck that just plays a bunch of zeros and tries to, just generate a ton of these drone tokens on turn 1 and a huge board advantage. So I don't know. Let me know what you think about the Modern strategy. I think that's probably where this card is at its best. Um, but let me know if there's any other examples that you could think of that makes this card even better. And then in Standard, I think this card has some legs too. And with Standard, I think this card is particularly good with the Simulacrum Synthesizer, which is 3 mana. Comes into play, you get a scry 2, so you could try to find your Emissary with the scry here. And it says whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters, you make a construct token. It's +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So let's say on turn 1, or turn 2, you played any sort of artifacts, such as the Cryogenic Relic, which draws cards. Seems like a pretty nice one to include in an artifact deck. And then turn 3, you play the Synthesizer. Turn 4, you can warp in this Emissary here, which only uses 1 of your mana, but because its actual mana value is 3, it's going to trigger the Synthesizer, and then that will make you a construct token, right? So that's pretty nice. And I mean, if you had multiples of these, that would be very powerful too. If you warped in multiple of them on turn 4, that would trigger this again, and then you could kind of go off even more. But let's just say you had the Memory Guardian, which has affinity for artifacts. This would only cost 1 mana of your 4 mana. So now you've used 2 of your manas here. But playing this Memory Guardian is going to give you another construct token from the synthesizer, but also give you a Thopter token from this. So now you have 7 artifacts, which could enable something like the Valkyrie aerial unit here, which would then give you another construct token and give you another drone token. So this would kind of just go pretty bananas on turn 4 if you had the synthesizer into the emissary here, and you had any sort of these artifacts, affinity for artifact cards, so maybe there could be some sort of affinity deck in Standard that this card creates as well. And then again, you kind of get this card later in the game too. The next turn, you can play this for 3 mana, and it's going to again trigger the Simulacrum Synthesizer. So this seems very powerful to me. Just adding up all the power that you made on turn 4, it's actually 37 power. It is more when you have the Emissary, but assuming it's going to leave play, the total power here from these 3 constructs and the 2 Thopters and the aerial unit and the Guardian is 37 total, and 10 of that is flying power. So that seems like a pretty good turn 4 in Standard. So this card seems very powerful in standard. Maybe there's some other applications. There are some zero mana artifacts even available in standard. So maybe there's something to be used there. But I think in combination with the synthesizer, this card is very, very powerful and could create an archetype around these two cards together. So let me know if there's any other standard combos you can think of with the Emissary. But that's kind of the potential that I could see for this being very good. So that's why I think this card is extremely powerful, potentially broken. Will it get banned? I don't know. Too early to see that, but it definitely seems very powerful in modern. Um, but potentially maybe in historic, in timeless, there's quite a few zero mana artifacts in those uh, sets as well that are available on Arena. So not as many as in Modern, but there could be maybe this creates some sort of affinity deck in Historic or Timeless. Let me know. I don't play those formats too often, but if you do and you think there's some potential there, let me know. Legacy, maybe Vintage. Again, I don't play those too often, but there are quite a few zero mana artifacts in those formats. So do you think this card is viable in Legacy and Vintage? Um, Seems pretty good to me, and I think it could have potential to really impact tons of formats in Magic and really create some kind of almost turn one wins or turn one board states that you just can't come back from. The fact that you can just warp this in on turn one and create a huge board state, and then on turn three you get it again, just seems really really good to me. It creates super powerful starts and also has some sort of late game staying potential over the course of the game as well. So those combined just seemed like a really good card. Very, very powerful. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Do you think this was a mistake that they printed this card? I'm not really sure. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video and let me know your comments below.